Hello viewers, welcome to my channel, Literature with NN. I am Dr. M. Nagalakshmi. Right? Now we are going to see Unit 10, Principles of Literary Criticism, that is Dryden, an essay of dramatic poesy. In my previous video, I have explained how to prepare for this PGTRB-English exam, the schedule, timetable, and how many questions from each unit, right? How to plan, how to motivate yourself, how to prepare questions, all those things I explained in my previous video. So now we are going to see the work. Start with Unit 10. Why Unit 10? Because I explained in my previous video, there are two units from literary theory and criticism, that is Unit 8 and Unit 10. For most of them, almost for those who are preparing for this PGTRB English exam, Unit 8 and Unit 10, they find it little tricky. Probably இதுக்கு முன்னாடி இருக்கிற யூனிட்ஸ் எல்லாம் உங்களுக்கு ஒர்க்ஸ் இருக்கும், டிராமா, ஃபிக்ஷன், போயட்ரி அந்த மாதிரிலாம் இருக்கும். இந்த ரெண்டு யூனிட்லையும் எல்லாமே ப்ரோஸ் எஸ்ஸேஸ் அண்ட் எல்லாமே உங்களுக்கு வந்துட்டு ஒரு புது புது இன்ஃபர்மேஷனை கொடுக்குற மாதிரி இருக்கிற எஸ்ஸேஸ், கிரிட்டிசிசம். அதனால ஸோ ஐ ஸ்டார்ட் வித் திஸ் யூனிட் 10. And why I have chosen Dryden's an essay of dramatic poesy? Because Aristotle ரொம்ப பழசா இருக்கிறதுனால ப்ராபபிலி உங்களோட யூஜி பிஜியில் அதை வாசிச்சிருக்கிறதுக்கான சான்ஸ் கிடைச்சிருக்காது. ஆனால் ட்ரைடனோடது கண்டிப்பாக ஏதாவது படிச்சிருப்பீங்க. அதனால கொஞ்சம் ரிலேட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு ஈஸியாக இருக்கும் அப்படின்றதுனால Dryden's essay of dramatic poesy. ரைட்? எனிவே நம்ம நிறைய வீடியோஸில் பார்க்க போகிறோம், எல்லா யூனிட்டும் பார்க்க போகிறோம், எல்லா ஒர்க்கும் பார்க்க போகிறோம். ரைட்? So now, Dryden, John Dryden. He was an English poet, dramatist and critic, and his age, known as Age of Dryden, leading figure of the Restoration age, and born in 1631 and died in 1700, dominating person. Because of that reason, that whole age was known as Age of Dryden. And Walt is rightly called him Glorious John. The first name is John, so Walter Scott வந்துட்டு இவரை Glorious John அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருக்காரு. And this essay, an essay of dramatic poesy, published in 1668. This essay, he has written this essay during the plague year 1666, but published during after the plague year in 1668. And what was the original title of this essay? The original title of the book is Of Dramatic Poesy, an Essay. So, in this book, you can see Dryden as the poet and Dryden as a playwright. Is it? This is a prose essay. And you can see Dryden as a poet and Dryden as a playwright. Yes, of course. Because the style of this essay, he wrote this essay as a dramatic dialogue with 4 characters representing 4 critical positions. Okay, இந்த ஒரு ஸ்லைட்ல இருந்து உங்களுக்கு எவ்வளவு क्वेश्चंस வரதுக்கான chances இருக்கு? Dryden, poet, dramatist, critic. Right? And who was the leading figure in the Restoration age அப்படின்னு கொடுத்துட்டு வேற 20th century writers கொடுத்துட்டு அதில் 3 ஆப்ஷன் கொடுத்துட்டு இதில் 4வது ஆப்ஷனை Dryden கொடுத்துட்டு you have to pick Dryden. Who called Dryden as Glorious John? Right? Walter Scott. And when did he publish this essay, an essay of dramatic poesy? In 1668. And what was the original title of the book? of dramatic poesy and essay. So, இந்த மாதிரி இவ்வளோ கொஷின்ஸுக்கு பாசிபிலிட்டிஸ் இருக்கு இந்த ஒரு ஸ்லைட்லேருந்து. And John Dryden, the father of English criticism, he has written critical prefaces on famous poems and other literary masters like Homer, Virgil, Shakespeare and Fletcher. Classist, and he adapts Aristotle's view of poetry as an imitation of facts. And the famous phrase, imitation pleases us. Right? And what is the purpose of poetry? The purpose of poetry is to delight and transport the reader. So for Dryden, it is fancy that gives the life touches. So, in this slide, எவ்வளோ questions chance இருக்கு? Father of English criticism யாரு? Dryden. And அவரு நிறைய critical prefaces எழுதிருக்காரு famous poemsக்கு, right? And who said imitation pleases us? John Dryden. And what is the purpose of poetry? To delight and transport the reader. And it is fancy that gives the life touches. Who said so? Dryden. So, இவ்வளோ questions-க்கு இதில் possibilities இருக்கு. Right? And when you prepare any work, what you have to do? Before you read the work, try to collect some basic information and some interesting facts about the writer. And especially a writer like Dryden, T.S. Eliot, you have to collect interesting facts. ரொம்ப important. Right? Now let's see an essay of dramatic poesy. Published in 1668, as I told you already, right? Written during the plague year, 1666. And in this book, Dryden discussed 5 issues. What are those? Ancients versus English drama, unities, that is unity of time, unity of place, unity of action, all these 3 unities. And then French versus English drama, and separation of tragedy and comedy versus tragic comedy. The term coined tragic comedy by Dryden. Appropriateness of rhyme in drama. So these are the 5 issues discussed in this essay. And 4 characters with 4 critical positions. And why did he write this essay? He wrote to prove that English dramatists were in no way inferior to the French ones. For that particular reason, Dryden has written this essay to prove that English dramatists are good. They're good. They are not inferior when compared to French. To prove this point, Dryden has written an essay of dramatic poesy, discussed 5 issues with 4 critical characters. An essay of dramatic poesy. Each character support and oppose classists or moderns. Let's see all those things in detail. Now, on the whole, Dryden talked about French dramatists carefully observed the classical rules of drama while the Elizabethan dramatists consciously ignored them. So what are the points discussed in this essay? And Dryden agrees with Aristotle on the definition of a comedy and calls it a representation of human life in inferior persons and low subjects. As we have seen in the previous slide itself, that Dryden adapts Aristotle's views. So here, once again, he agrees the definition of comedy according to Aristotle. He agrees that what is comedy? A representation of human life in inferior persons and low subjects. Let me explain these things in the coming slides. Okay, one thing you have to remember in this slide, that Dryden agrees with Aristotle on the definition of a comedy. That is very, very important. And you have to, know the lines, exact lines. A representation of human life in inferior persons and low subjects is the definition of dash. Comedy, tragedy, romance, tragicomedy. Then you have to choose comedy. Right? Its purpose is to teach people through laughter. What is the purpose of comedy? The purpose of comedy is to teach people through laughter. He recommends a close study of Greek and Latin literary works which function as a torch to enlighten our passage. So, Dryden, as we have seen in the previous slide, he wants to prove that English dramatists are no way inferior to French. It doesn't mean that they should not read those things, the classic writers' work. No, they have to read. And they have to read all those things, and they have to remember those works function. What is the function of those works? Function as a torch to enlighten our passage. You have to remember all those things. So, in the phrase, function as a torch to enlighten our passage. Said by Dryden, for what? He recommended a close study of Greek and Latin literary works. And Dryden introduced a comparative analysis to criticism. So, who introduced comparative analysis to criticism? It's Dryden. So, in this slide, ivlo questions ku chances irukku. Right? So, Dryden takes up the subject that Philip Sidney had set forth in his defense of poesy and attempts to justify drama as a legitimate form of poetry comparable to the epic, as well as defend English drama against that of ancients and the French. So, in the dramatic poesy, Dryden எழுதுனதுக்கு ரொம்ப important reason, அதோட பேஸ் யார் செட் பண்ணிருக்கா அப்படின்னு பார்த்தா, இந்த previous year 1580ல Philip Sidneyயோடது defense of poesy, right? And then here Dryden என்ன சொல்றாரு? Drama as a legitimate form of poetry comparable to the epic. And he defend English drama against that of ancient and the French. இந்த ஸ்லைட்ல இருந்து இது யாரு இதுக்கு ஒரு பேஸ் செட் பண்ணது? Philip Sidney. எந்த work? Defense of Poesy. எந்த year? 1580. And யாரு சொன்னது drama as a legitimate form of poetry? That is Dryden. Right? யாரு defend பண்ணது English drama-வை against French and ancients? That is also Dryden. And இங்க 4 speakers, right? Eugenius, Critus, Lycidius, and Neander. Okay. So with this, I end this video. Right? We can see the 4 critics அவங்களோட points எப்படி சொல்றாங்க அப்படின்றத நம்ம next videoல பார்ப்போம். Right? இந்த வீடியோ பிடிச்சிருந்தா ஷேர் பண்ணுங்க, subscribe பண்ணுங்க. Thank you viewers.